If someone asked you to draw a raindrop, chances are you would sketch a small teardrop with a rounded bottom and a pointed top. It is one of the most recognizable symbols in the world, appearing on weather apps, road signs, company logos, and children's books. But despite how familiar it looks, that iconic shape is surprisingly inaccurate. Real raindrops falling through the sky do not look like tiny tears at all. In fact, the vast majority are almost perfectly round, while larger ones become flatter instead of pointier. So why do people think raindrops are tear-shaped? Today we're exploring how this misconception began, what raindrops actually look like, and why the tear-shaped raindrop has remained one of the world's most successful scientific myths, right here on History of Simple Things. The tear-shaped raindrop did not come from scientific observation. Instead, it evolved as a visual symbol over centuries. Early artists and illustrators needed a simple way to represent falling water in paintings, maps, and printed materials. A rounded bottom with a pointed top immediately suggested movement, making it easier for viewers to recognize water at a glance. Over time, this stylized design became widely accepted. As books, advertisements, and weather graphics became more common, the symbol spread across cultures. Eventually, the tear-shaped raindrop became so familiar that most people assumed it represented reality rather than artistic shorthand. This happens with many everyday symbols. Just as hearts do not resemble actual human hearts, the familiar raindrop icon was created because it communicates an idea quickly and effectively. Once people repeatedly saw the same shape throughout childhood, it became deeply ingrained in memory, making it difficult to question even when science tells a different story. In reality, a freshly formed raindrop inside a cloud begins as an almost perfect sphere. This happens because surface tension pulls water molecules together equally in every direction, naturally creating the shape with the smallest possible surface area. Tiny raindrops, usually less than about 2 millimeters across, remain nearly spherical even as they fall through the air. As drops become larger, however, air resistance begins pushing upward against the bottom of the drop. Instead of stretching into a teardrop, the bottom flattens while the top stays rounded. Scientists often compare this shape to a hamburger bun or the top half of a bun resting on a flat base. If raindrops grow even larger, they become increasingly unstable. The flattened shape eventually breaks apart into several smaller spherical drops. This constant cycle prevents enormous raindrops from reaching the ground, explaining why rainfall usually consists of many small drops rather than giant ones. One of the biggest reasons people believe raindrops become tear-shaped is the assumption that falling through the air pulls them into a point. At first glance, that idea seems reasonable. After all, moving objects often appear stretched in the direction of travel. However, water behaves differently because of the balance between surface tension and air pressure. As a raindrop falls, air presses against its underside much more strongly than gravity pulls it downward into a pointed shape. Instead of forming a tail, the drop compresses from below. High-speed photography has confirmed this countless times. Scientists using specialized cameras have captured falling raindrops in extraordinary detail, showing that they never resemble tiny tears. Even in heavy storms, large drops become flatter and wobble before splitting apart. The pointed end seen in drawings simply does not exist in nature. Our intuition about moving water turns out to be misleading because the invisible forces acting on the drop are far more important than its downward motion alone. For much of human history, no one could actually observe the shape of a falling raindrop in detail. Rain falls too quickly for the human eye to study accurately. It was only during the 20th century, with advances in high-speed photography and laboratory experiments, that scientists could finally capture raindrops in motion. Researchers also used wind tunnels to simulate rainfall by suspending water droplets in moving air, allowing them to study how different sizes behaved under controlled conditions. These experiments consistently showed that small drops remained spherical, while larger ones flattened into shapes resembling buns or tiny parachutes before breaking apart. Radar observations and mathematical models later confirmed these findings, strengthening scientists' understanding of rainfall. Today, meteorologists use this knowledge when interpreting weather radar because the shape and size of raindrops affect how radar signals bounce back. Understanding their true form is not just interesting. It also improves weather forecasting and rainfall measurements. Although real raindrops are not tear-shaped, their actual behavior is far more fascinating. Every drop is constantly changing as it falls through the atmosphere. It collides with other droplets, grows larger, shrinks through evaporation, and responds to changing air currents. Surface tension works continuously to maintain a smooth shape, while air resistance pushes back against the falling water. The balance between these forces determines whether a drop remains nearly spherical, flattens into a bun-like form, or breaks into smaller droplets. This process also influences how rain sounds, how sunlight creates rainbows, and how weather radar detects storms. Even the speed at which a raindrop falls depends on its size, with larger drops reaching a higher terminal velocity than smaller ones. These tiny droplets may seem simple, but they are governed by remarkably complex physics. Looking beyond the familiar symbol reveals an elegant natural process that scientists continue to study today. The next time someone asks you to draw a raindrop, you may pause before sketching the familiar tear-shaped icon. It is one of the world's most recognizable symbols, but it reflects human creativity more than scientific reality. Real raindrops begin as tiny spheres, flatten as they grow, and eventually split apart instead of forming pointed tails. The myth survived because the symbol was simple, memorable, and easy to reproduce. Thanks to photography and atmospheric science, we now know what raindrops really look like. It is a reminder that even familiar ideas can be wrong, and that nature is often more remarkable than the symbols we use to represent it. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.